Mic test. 1, 2. Standby crew. 3, 2, 1. Rolling for On Her Side.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, and welcome to On Her Side. I have my guest today with me, Sara Dard. Sara, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Jazakallah for coming on today, for taking the time.
Jazakallah for inviting me.
So today we're talking about something that's very, very interesting. It's a very important and interesting question that I think all youth ask at some point, which is, how do I know when I'm ready to get married? So I think if we just take a step back and we reflect on our environments today, we know that society puts so much emphasis on a woman, especially a young woman, being independent and self-sufficient and ambitious. And it kind of makes you put marriage to the back of your to-do list or your priority list, right? And I think it connects with that fairy tale concept, those stories that we see in mainstream media and movies and books and things where there's the princess who's only objective in life is to get married. And so society now, I think in this day and age, we feel like that's a little bit of a backward idea. And so women who might prioritize marriage over other goals are seen as backward as well, right? So what do you think? How do we know?
So I think, like most things, if we take it back to childhood, from a very young age, at least in our case, the idea or the fact that you'll be married, it's planted, and it's something that we accept, that when I grow up, I'm going to get married. And so for a really long period of time, or for a significant amount of time, the seed is sown and the roots start to grow. And so you create ideas, or you start to fill in the blanks. Okay, I'm going to get married. I've accepted this. This is what my partner will look like. This is what language
You
they'll
start to
speak.
think about it and imagine it kind of.
And you start to hold these things really close and dear to yourself. It's very personal. You don't share with a lot of people, but under the surface, you're starting to put something together, and in your mind, you come up with a list. This is what's going to happen. And so then when you're approached with this idea or this dream of yours, in a lot of ways, or things you've dreamed about becoming a reality, when it becomes real, then you start to realize, well, maybe everything that I've imagined, it's not going to come true for me. And it's hard to reconcile with that a lot of times. So you feel like, I'm not ready yet. I haven't grown yet, or I'm not prepared for that yet. I'm not ready to kind of start compromising in this way yet.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. And I just think that along the way, you're also observing other people's marriages, right? So you're looking at your parents' marriage, grandparents, older cousins, siblings, etc., and you're observing and you're learning and absorbing all kinds of lessons and things that that are good about marriage, perhaps bad, etc. And I think over the years, then you form your own opinion about it as well, right?
Yeah, and it's from observation, and it's also from conversation, because this is a pretty open conversation in lots of families and in cultures, definitely. So even if you're not observing, or the models that you have, even if you're being told that, it's going to be very challenging, and a lot of the time we portray it as the greatest battle of your life. And so if something is kind of portrayed to you as a battle and a challenge, why would I be ready for something like that? I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready to enter into this phase of my life that's going to bring on a lot of difficulties. And I think although it is challenging, we don't often communicate the trade-off. Why is it worth it? Why is it a worthy challenge?
Yeah, and I think that's a very important point, because you're right. From a young age, girls are taught, you've got to learn how to cook. You've got to learn how to clean after yourself. You've got to learn how to do this and that and this and that. And it's all for the higher purpose of marriage, right? You're going to get married one day. You've got to know how to do this, this. So all you're thinking all these years is that all I got to do when I get there is I have to work, right? I got to clean, I have to cook, I have to do this, and I have to do that. And sometimes I think when that idea is promoted heavily or too intensely, perhaps, some girls or some youth, maybe some boys as well, actually start to resent it, right? They start to think, well, is this all my life is going to be about? Because you're never taught or you're never told that you're going to enjoy your life. Like life is going to be great after you get
Right.
married. It's about you need to be ready for this and this. Like you
Right.
said, it's like a
Yeah.
battle that you're going to enter at some point in your
Yeah.
life. So who wants to do that, right?
Right. And I think we perpetuate the idea of, is that all I am? Am I just going to be a wife? Am I just going to be a mother? All of this, all of these skills that I'm learning, or even the knowledge I'm gaining, is it only because people will just see me as this one role in my life? And so that goes back to perpetuating this idea that if you only prioritize marriage, or if that's a number one priority in your mind, you're backwards and you're not thinking, you're not enlightened in a way, because you're not a whole person. You're just chasing this one thing. But I think that's definitely the case if I'm being told you need to know how to do all of these different things because that's your job once you get married. Also, when we're talking about our education and religious education, especially, a lot of the time we're told it's because you're going to be a mother and you're going to pass on this knowledge. And while that's true, we forget that it's for our own benefit too. So we
course.
shift the focus from our own self growth and our own growth as a person to this just being something that I'm passing on. And I think that that's another thing that we struggle with then. But if we shift the narrative a little bit and we shift the idea a little bit, I'm learning this for my own self. This is for me to be a whole person and have my connection with Allah Ta'ala. If I'm growing up and I feel like this is for my own personal growth, then when it's time to pass it on, you won't have this feeling of resentment or that, I was working toward.
Yes.
you
In
know.
fact, actually, if you focus on self growth and self awareness and self regulation, etc., these characteristics are actually going to enable you to participate and contribute more productively in a marriage and
Yeah.
in a home, in a family
Yeah.
setting, right? Because when
Yeah.
a mother is emotionally secure and stable and she's spiritually committed and engaged, she's
Right.
going to most definitely create an environment in the house where everybody is going to partake of that, right?
Right. I think it prevents this identity crisis that a lot of us face. And even after
Yeah.
marriage, if you feel like this is all I have, it
Yeah.
really, you don't, again, you're not growing as a whole person. It's
Yeah.
losing your identity a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah. No, and I think you made a good point about how if everything is narrated as you need to do this so you can pass it on to your children, you need to do this so you can be a good wife, you need to do this so you can be a good daughter in law, then it does create that type of loss of self, right? As well. And then
Yeah.
that will definitely also create some feelings of at the very least confusion, if not resentment or so. And oftentimes then we do see that, that youth will attain a certain age, which is might be perceived as a marriageable age, but now they're thinking, hey, it's time for me to live my life.
Yeah.
I've done everything you wanted me to. I've learned all the skills you wanted me to, but now I need to, before I get into this, so because their perception of marriage is that you're going to give.
Yeah.
So they actually want to just take a step back and
Yeah.
they want to take some time
Yeah.
and, realize themselves or pursue their own goals, and that type of thinking is quite common these days.
And it's a really heavy burden to think that I'm only gaining all of this knowledge or I'm only learning these things because I'm going to pass it on.
Yes.
And you don't take advantage or you don't find the comfort in learning these different
Yes,
things.
yes.
A lot of the time, if I'm just learning this prayer that, I'm going to pass this knowledge on to my
Yes,
children,
of
it's
course,
important. But
of course.
what about me taking comfort in knowing this prayer
For sure,
myself and
for
leaning
sure.
on this knowledge for myself?
For sure.
And then when I go on, it's time to pass it on. But it's about completing yourself and having this self-identity, I think, is really important. If we don't just paint everything as the end goal is, passing it on as a mother. I think if we're whole, then that will be settled on its own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, going back to the point I said at the beginning where I said that society these days, mainstream society, will put a lot of pressure, especially on young women, to become self-sufficient and, independent before they're ready to commit. It's
Right.
because this idea of marriage is about relying on someone else. So the idea is, why do you need to rely on anybody? You should be autonomous.
for
You
yourself.
should be independent. You don't need anybody else to support you. And so therefore, go and pursue all of these other goals first, where you can become more stable and maybe
Right.
financially stable as
Right.
well and emotionally more mature, etc. And then when all of that is said and done, now comes the time for possibly committing,
Right.
and sharing your life with somebody else.
Right.
And I think a large part of that then the question becomes, when are you ready, right? When have you now accomplished enough
Yep.
to say that I'm independent and I'm emotionally stable and I'm financially secure and now I'm ready? When does that happen? What does that mean? Is it a house and a job and a car, or is it more than that?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what you were saying. If we portray it only as this is just give, 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 it's about fulfilling your responsibilities, then it takes you a lot of time. If you feel, okay, well, I'm only going to be giving, I need to be able to be financially independent. I need to have my own car, my own home. No, it doesn't end. If we think about, when will I be ready to live this ideal life? It
Yeah.
never ends. We can never fulfill all those boxes.
Yeah.
And it's not seen, marriage isn't seen as the next phase where you're continuing to grow. I've grown
Yes.
and I've become who I am,
Yes,
and now
and
it's
now
time
I'm
to.
going to share. So
Yeah.
I think a large part of that, so then faith, that's where faith steps in,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You need to learn how to say to God that this is now, I'm going to put myself in your hands, and you are going to take me and guide me
Yeah.
wherever you need me to go. And that's very, very difficult.
It's
Right.
absolutely, yeah. Relinquishing control, it takes a lot of strength and a lot of courage. And so I think if I were to answer the question, when do you think you're ready? I think that you're ready when you have security and faith in the most important relationship in your life, and that's the relationship with Allah Ta'ala. Once you've established the trust and the security with Allah Ta'ala, then you're ready to accept whatever situation is presented in front of you, because you know that Allah Ta'ala is protecting you and safeguarding you. And not just that, you don't just say, Allah Ta'ala, you're going to protect me, so put me in any situation. You're able to say, we have such a great and strong relationship with Allah Ta'ala, I know you will bless me and prosper me. So even if somebody isn't checking off all the boxes that I had imagined from before, this may just be what's right for me.
Yeah.
Even if everything isn't fulfilled, because I know that you have blessed me and you're going to prosper me. I think that that's a really big part of it. If you're secure in the relationship with Allah, then I think you have the strength and the courage to relinquish control to Him. Because it's not a decision you can make being logical, right?
Yeah.
There are people who know each other and each other's families their whole lives,
Yeah.
and it doesn't end up working out. And
Even related to one another.
yeah, related to one another, or there are situations where nobody knows each other and that works out, but people who knew each other their whole lives through family,
Yeah.
it doesn't work out. So the more you try to rationalize or make a logical decision, I think it's a little bit of a fallacy for us to think that, we'll know, because.
But then I'm thinking, from the perspective of, let's say, an 18-year-old, a 20-year-old, maybe a 22-year-old,
Yeah.
what if they don't feel that connection with God? What if they don't feel like there is an instinct in them, or that God speaks to them, or their prayers are heard, or, maybe they're not even praying. Maybe they've just not, so what do we say to those people?
Yeah, I think it's a tough situation, because for us to feel like our prayers are being accepted or Allah's listening to us, it's a struggle for everybody, and it's a constant struggle. It's not like you maintain it.
Yeah.
If you keep working at it, of course you do get to a certain position, but you may start to fall off, and you feel like it's not. It's a work in progress. I think that that's something that we need to do. We need to work on consistently, and I think that's where it comes in, that you're praying not just for this one end goal in your mind. You're praying so that you have a relationship with Allah Ta'ala, so that now if it's the matter of getting married, or now if it's the matter of children and raising children, you've
You're gonna
established
need
a
him at
relationship
some
with Allah
point
Ta'ala
down
at
the
some
line,
point.
so you might as well just, And I think also the other thing too is that, this is where your social network comes in. So you have your parents, you have some trusted friends, you have other elders whom you can turn to and talk about how to make this decision. How do I make my mind agree, perhaps, or make my mind come to that point where I'm comfortable with this idea of marriage, and not be so fearful or resentful or whatever it is that you're going through, right? So we're talking about the youth being ready to get married, but what about parents? Sometimes I feel like parents are not ready at all to get their son or their daughter married, and I feel like that's somehow that manifests afterwards. So if you have your son getting married, sometimes as a mother, you're not really ready to have another woman, enter into your son's life and share decisions with your son, or just be a part of their life. You were not ready for that.
Yeah.
And in the case of daughters too, I've seen many mothers who are over involved in their daughters' lives, and it's kind of like they're still almost living, together as well. Is that
Yeah.
that's how much is shared, and that really speaks to boundaries and being and readiness for the parents as well, right?
Yeah.
So I think as the youth are thinking these things through, the parents are also or should be thinking about how it's going to look like
Yeah.
once their kids are married.
Yeah.
The other thing that came to my mind was sometimes parents will say that, I know my child really well and they're not ready. And I would always ask, so then what's the plan? Like, how are you getting them ready,
Yeah.
and what's going to make them ready? And I actually just remembered one time there was a lady who asked me to connect her with another family for a rishta, and she had a daughter, and she was requesting if I could, talk to the mother of the boy. So I called up the lady, and I asked her about her son, who was 25 years old, and she said, oh, you know what, we're not ready yet to look for his rishta. So I said, okay, and, I wanted to ask, like, why? So she says, well, he's the youngest of four brothers. So she had four sons, and he was the youngest.
Yeah.
And she said that, he just doesn't have any sense of responsibility because his brothers always take care of everything for him. And she was saying it like really proudly, right? So
Yeah.
I was thinking in my mind then, well, he's 25.
What's
so
the plan?
if he, like, what's your plan? Like, when
Yeah.
is he going to grow up? And
Yeah.
are you going to shift some responsibility to him,
Yeah.
or? So she did not seem worried at all, and
Right.
it wasn't at all a concern,
Yeah.
right? So there's that as well.
Yeah, and I think if I were to hear someone say I'm not ready and they haven't begun the process yet, I would take their word for it. You're right, you're not ready, but if you plan to learn to swim, you need to dip your toes in the water. And this process, as someone going through the process myself, it's a process that demands a lot of self-reflection, and you answer questions that hadn't occurred to you before. So until you get going, even if you don't feel you're ready yet, until you start the process and until you start to accept that, okay, this is something I want to get ready for, you're not going to answer those questions and you won't be ready. There's no way to be ready if you don't put yourself in a situation to answer these questions and really reflect and, again, build that relationship with Allah Ta'ala. And I think one thing that I wanted to mention when we were talking about the process of developing the relationship with Allah Ta'ala, I think on the one hand, yes, it's something that we need to work toward every day and struggle toward every day, but we also shouldn't be discouraged. If you feel like recently or overall you haven't been pulling your end of the bargain or holding up your end of the bargain or pulling your weight in this relationship with Allah Ta'ala, if you feel you haven't been fulfilling His rights, there's no time, you're never too late to start. I think sometimes we get ashamed or we feel shy to go in front of Allah Ta'ala because why would Allah listen to me? I haven't been fulfilling, my responsibilities. Why would He listen? But I think that's where we sell Allah Ta'ala really short. Again, in the Quran, again and again, Allah Ta'ala says, I'm all forgiving and merciful. So I think when we keep that in mind, no matter when I go to Allah Ta'ala, He will listen to me. I think that brings you a lot of comfort too. So I think it goes back to having a level of comfort and trust in your relationship with Allah Ta'ala. Allah says that if you come toward me walking, I'll come toward you running.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a matter of being ready to become ready. And get ready in the process. And I can definitely say it demands a lot of answers to questions that you hadn't asked before. So if someone doesn't feel that their children are ready, I think get started because the process is such that it will make you ready.
Yeah, and I think just going back to your point too about the process teaching you a lot about yourself. So, for example, if there is a proposal that comes where, the other party or the boy, let's say in this case, is living in Europe, for example, that allows you to think, is this something I want to do? Am I
Right.
okay? Am I ready to move across the ocean and go and live in another continent away from my family, etc.? Some people are okay with that and some are not, right?
Yeah.
But until that person comes to you in that circumstance and that family is there, you're not considering so many things. So you're right, the process also gets you ready. The other thing too is that the process gives you wisdom. So if you do decide to take that leap and to start that process, oftentimes, almost always, you will not have the perfect right fit walk in through the door the first time, right? So you're going to meet a lot of people. You're going to talk to a lot of families. You're going to interact with a lot of people. And as you are going through that process, you will learn what doesn't work for you and what doesn't click with your family and what's not right. And I know sometimes it's really discouraging as well, but eventually then when the right people do walk in, you know right away because you've gone through so much, so much of that journey that it's taught you a sort of wisdom, yourself and your family.
Right. And I think from a lot of cases, so this is thinking about it in the future, I think also when you reflect, when you do know that it's right and you're able to make that decision, I think it reinforces your trust in Allah Ta'ala because you realize that I am able to make this decision and Allah Ta'ala has put it in my heart. So I think that that's another thing that's reassuring. The whole process, this is a sunnat that we're fulfilling, and it definitely brings you closer to Allah Ta'ala if you approach it with a positive and open mindset. So I think that it's also really important. It's an important part of our faith too. To, if we're not ready, start to get ready and maybe grow closer to Allah Ta'ala through the process.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just going back to, we were talking earlier about all of our other priorities in life. And, we want to become independent and we want to become self-sufficient, etc. So let's say you've now accomplished all of those goals and now you have decided that, yes, I'm ready. I think one of the biggest fallacies in the way that we approach or that a lot of youth will approach this decision is that now that they have accomplished all of this, they want exactly that reflected in the partner. Right? So if I'm a physician, I'm a surgeon, I'm a pharmacist, I'm whatever kind of professional, I'm an engineer, I need now an engineer husband or an engineer wife, which is ridiculous because what does that say about a person? Nothing. That's just their job. Like that's just their career. That's where they go to work. And not just that, it has to be equal status. If I own this, they need to own this. If I work, they need to work. If I work at this level, they need to work at this level. Everything has to be equal. So now, while it's great that, and you may even find somebody who's equal, then there's the next stage of everything has to be 50-50 post-marriage, right? So we have to equally share the expenses, the bills, and all of that. Even that, I would say, okay, maybe if you found a willing partner, that's great. It works out. How long is it going to work out? It's not meant to be that way, right? So eventually you're going to have kids, you're going to have a family, and the girl is going to be responsible for other things, and maybe not able to share 50-50 with you. So what are you going to do then? Are you going to, spend more so that the kids can go to childcare so that the wife is able to do 50-50? Like it's not a sensible long-term solution.
Yes. How long can you try to apply logic or rational decision making to something that is not rational or something that you can't make a decision on? There are no guarantees. There's no black and white. How long can you keep doing that? And then when you're faced with something that's ambiguous or takes compromise, when you go from something being quantitative to now qualitative, how do you make that decision now? Because up until now, it was all just 50-50. So where are we now? And I think the term of 50-50, we're mistaken. I think it's I'm 100%. I am my own person, and I am 100% on my own. You're a whole person. Let's come together and be stronger that way, rather than I'm 50, you're 50, and then we're always below 100 because sometimes I'm not giving 50%. I'm giving 30. So why not focus on, are they whole as a person? And those things that aren't quantifiable, those things that we can't kind of just check off on a list, are they there? And are you willing, if you're not at 50, are you willing to grow in that way? Why does it always just have to be what is at the face value?
And it's the whole concept of give and take, right? So if you're approaching it with, here's what this person can give me. So, you're reading this proposal, this match, right? So this information, and you're saying, okay, well, this person's educated at this level. Okay, great. That meets my criteria, and their age is this, and he's good to look at. So that's great too. Income. I don't know if this job has that much income. So how is he going to afford, our house or our lifestyle or whatever it is? Well, what are you bringing to the table, right? Why is it that the other person just has to, you have to take from them? It's all about what can I take, and not being humble enough to say, what am I bringing? Am I
Right.
going to contribute? So, we were talking about the youth being pressured to become self-sufficient and to have achieved, a significant piece before delving into this life event. And I think that unfortunately, then, what happens is that individuals, because they're fearful of taking this next step, or perhaps they lack the self-confidence, they're worried about how it'll go. Sometimes even inadvertently kind of fall into the trap of dating,
Right.
which is basically that they would like to see how a person is, maybe talk to them, and maybe,
Yeah.
but I think to sort of all out, go and speak to multiple individuals, etc., it's really not going to bring you any benefit.
Right. And I think the other thing is the nature of dating. It becomes you look at the other person as disposable. Because if they don't have everything, or when you get to a point where it seems like, okay, well, this is something that they're lacking, all right, well, let me find someone else, let me move on. And so it's, I think the nature of it is such that you don't ever find the answer. Whereas if you do approach something as, okay, I just want to find out who this person is, and if I'm okay with who they are, then I'll start my life. Then at that point, you're more committed to making it work.
Whenever you are in that environment, everyone's always going to put their best foot forward.
Of
So you really are
course.
never going to be
Yeah.
able to get to know that person,
Yeah.
unless you genuinely start living a life
Right.
together. That's when you
Right.
find out. We were talking about how over the years, both girls and boys will also inevitably, of course, be surrounded by people who are married, and you will be observing other people's marriages.
Right.
But it's also inevitable then that you will come across some stories of divorce, unfortunately. And I think because divorce is on the rise these days, there could be this element of you know, of real fear in the
Of
minds of
course.
youth
Yeah.
about how their marriage might work out or
Yeah.
might not work out.
Yeah, and I think that as a society, we're to blame for that too, because we find we share horror stories more often than we share the success stories. Whatever is sensationalized, whatever has a
Gossip
little more
material.
gossip,
Yeah.
whatever's more gossipy, that's what we share. That's what we talk about when we're sitting in a group. We find that the conversation often drifts towards that rather than the positive models that we have in our life. Because what does that do? That doesn't bring any excitement. So a lot of the time, we're doing a disservice to a lot of the young people who are around us when we're only sharing the negative, or we're teaching them lessons based on what is not. What are the negative examples that are around us?
Yes. What are the lessons learned from a disaster?
From a disaster,
Yeah, yeah.
When in fact that's no, we're doing them a disservice, because why would I want to be ready for something like that? Or
course,
how
of
can I
course.
find comfort or the strength, the peace to move on if I think like this is what's in store for me in most cases?
Yeah, and I think that that's just a lesson for us as well, as to maybe highlight more positive stories,
Yeah.
more inspirational stories of everyone around us who is living a very stable and secure,
Right.
happy married life.
Right.
And when we do start to highlight those stories, then it will impact the minds of youth
Yep.
who are looking to go down this road.
Definitely.
And then I also wonder, there might be some youth out there who might be of a young age, maybe early 20s, maybe even younger than that, who, let's take an example of a young man who says that he's ready to get married, but perhaps has not accomplished all of those other
Right.
things that society holds as milestones for
Right.
him. And he may not have a house, he may not have a stable job. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what you mentioned earlier, Manazaji, about what is our perception of what marriage is. And I think if somebody says that they're ready, then I think it's our responsibility to honor it. And I think that if they understand the seriousness of it, and if they understand the responsibilities that come with it, and they have a plan or they have commitment toward working toward it, then I think that that's fine. And I think it's not something that parents should discourage or make that decision, because if we discourage it, if we say you don't have a house yet, or you don't have this level of income yet, what are we saying in that case? We're saying that it's only in your hands, when in fact Allah Ta'ala is Razik, Allah Ta'ala is the provider. If you make the effort, then Allah Ta'ala makes you successful. So it goes back to, how do we perceive marriage to be? Is it only give, 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 and is it just setting up a house, or is it something where mutually we're growing and we're building a strong unit together? Yeah.
Alhamdulillah, we are so fortunate to have faith in our lives, because I think without faith, especially in this journey, there is no progress, right? And as we've discussed, it's all about having that relationship with Allah Almighty and having that trust in Him that He is the ultimate planner. He is the best of the planners. He controls your fate, and that if you put your trust in Him, that He will surely come to your aid and He will support you. And with that, I think that's all the time that we had today. Jazakallah once again for coming and for having such an amazing
Oh,
conversation.
Jazakallah for inviting me. And I think it's important that we have these conversations and we
Absolutely.
discuss them. Like we said, we need trusted peers and we need a community around us who gives us a little bit of strength. And I think it's important to have this conversation about whether you're ready or not, because I think it's a valid question to ask yourself. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Inshallah. Jazakallah.
Inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum wa
Assalamu alaikum
rahmatullahi wa
warahmatullahi
barakatuhu.
wabarakatuh.
Cut. That's a wrap for On Her Side.